My name is Harper Lane. I'm 31, and today marks the fifth time my father has delayed my mother's will. The judge's gavel cracked like a gunshot, freezing the air. Across the courtroom, Gregory Ames, my father, leaned back, smiling as if he'd just won another tax case instead of gutting his daughter. My mother's silver pendant burned in my palm. He thinks this is about $85,000 and an old house. He's wrong. It's about the chest he buried with her secrets. But what they didn't know was that I'd already found the key. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. Because what started as a simple inheritance fight turned into a war of manipulation, secrets, and power, the kind that doesn't end when the judge leaves the room. Stay with me. This story goes from courtrooms to hidden compartments, from legal briefs to buried confessions. And every lie my father told, I'm about to drag it into the light. The first time I realized my father could bend the truth, I was 16. Mom's kitchen smelled like burnt coffee and cheap candles, her version of courage. The light above the sink flickered as she tried to find the right words. Her voice trembled, but her eyes didn't. Your father isn't coming home tonight, she said, folding a dish towel that didn't need folding. He's made other choices. That was her gentle way of saying he's with someone else. I didn't cry right away. I remember the hum of the refrigerator, the slow drip of the faucet, and the thin silver chain sliding from her neck into my hand. If they ever force you to stay silent, she whispered, closing my fingers around the pendant, choose the time yourself. I didn't understand what she meant. Not then. But that night carved the first crack in my belief that justice always wins. 2 months later, the divorce papers came as letterhead, embossed, hers plain. He kept the lake house, the retirement accounts, even the damn piano. Mom got the townhouse in Beaverton and a savings account that wouldn't last the year. I watched her sign anyway. He has connections, she said quietly. And I just want peace. Peace, I would later learn, was her word for defeat disguised as dignity. Fast forward to Thanksgiving the following year. Mom had stretched her librarian paycheck into a small feast turkey. Instant gravy, one pie cooling on the windowsill. My father arrived late, sharp suit, sharp cologne, a smile that could sell repentance. He brought his new wife, Diane, a woman with 2 white teeth and a diamond so large it caught the ceiling light like a spotlight on sin. Be nice. Mom had begged before they arrived. I was nice. I smiled. I listened to him boast about new clients and European vacations while Diane stroked his arm. When he raised a toast to family, I bit my tongue so hard it tasted like pennies. Later, washing dishes alone, Mom slipped a folded note beside the sink. On the back of a grocery receipt, she had written one sentence. Find beneath the roses. I thought she was being poetic, she always was. I tucked it into my journal and forgot about it for 15 years. After she died, the townhouse felt like a mausoleum wrapped in soft yellow light. The radiator hissed like a sleeping animal. The curtains smelled faintly of her lavender detergent. I spent hours in that living room, surrounded by her books and silence. That's where I first noticed the oak chest, thick, old, carved with roses that curled like smoke. She used to store blankets in it, or so I thought. But before that discovery, there were years of becoming her opposite: law school, suits, defense work, discipline. I graduated, top 10%, hungry to make things right in a system built for men like my father. My classmates took corporate jobs. I joined the public defender's office. When I told him, he laughed across his glass of scotch. Do you enjoy losing, Harper? Because that's what public defenders do. I swallowed the burn that wasn't from the whiskey. The years blurred into long nights. Too many clients. Not enough wins. But I believed in the idea that everyone deserved a fair fight, even the ones who couldn't pay. Maybe it was a way to redeem what I couldn't fix at home. Then, 8 months ago, Mom's phone call came in the middle of a cross-exam prep. Her voice was soft, breathless. Don't let him take it, Harper. Promise me. I didn't know what it was. I told her to rest. By the time I reached the hospital, the bed was empty. Cancer had stolen what he hadn't already claimed. At her funeral, Gregory stood 2 rows back. Dark glasses, crocodile tears. He didn't speak to me. He didn't have to. His attorney, Daniel Pike, handed me a card on the way out. We'll be in touch about the estate. I remember thinking, even death doesn't stop a man like him from billing the hours. A month later, I stood in probate court for the first hearing. The marble floors reflected everything: my trembling hands, his smirk, the judge's impatience. Judge Nolan Merrick. Everyone said he was efficient. I learned that efficient meant predictably partial. When Merrick granted Dad's first request for additional review, Maya Chin leaned close and whispered, "He's playing chess. You're reacting in checkers." She was right. I'd known Maya since law school, a strategist with calm eyes and a surgeon's precision. When my temper burned hot, she stayed cool enough for both of us. After the hearing, she slid a folder across the hood of my car. "Document every irregularity, every delay, every whisper." She looked over her shoulder. "Because this isn't normal procedure." Weeks later, that phone call came from a Virginia number I didn't recognize. "Miss Lane? My name is Sabine Ortiz. I served with your mother. She trusted me once." Her tone wasn't nostalgic. It was measured, tactical. "She left something behind that matters now." Sabine asked to meet at noon, at a cafe with fogged windows and a neon open sign that flickered like a warning. She arrived precisely on time, short hair, military posture, eyes like gunmetal. "Your mother wasn't a librarian," she said, stirring her black coffee. "She was signals intelligence. Operation Tide Glass." The words meant nothing to me until she slid a photograph across the table. Mom, in uniform, younger, sharper, standing beside two men, Gregory Ames and Nolan Merrick. I almost dropped my cup. "That's impossible." Sabine leaned in. "Not impossible. Classified." She lowered her voice. "Your father and Judge Merrick were legal advisors on that project. They used intercepted data to influence outcomes. Promotions, cases, votes." My stomach turned. And my mother? She found out, and she documented everything. She was supposed to hand it to internal investigators, then she backed off. Said she had a daughter to protect. Her next words cut through me like glass. She didn't just hide the evidence. She encoded it. Somewhere personal. The image of the oak chest flashed in my mind, its carved roses, her note, "Find beneath the roses." Sabine placed a napkin on the table, her handwriting precise. "Remember this phrase," she said. "Amber Lark." She didn't explain. She just stood, left a $20 bill under her cup, and walked out into the drizzle. That night, I drove to the townhouse and sat in front of the chest. The house creaked with the same rhythm as my heartbeat. I traced the carvings, each rose petal worn smooth by time. I pressed against one of them accidentally, at first, and heard a faint click. The lid lifted higher than before. Inside were the usual things: folded quilts, letters, an old photo album. But something about the base looked off, a thin seam barely visible in the wood grain. I pressed again. Nothing. I whispered the words Sabine had said. "Amber Lark." No movement. I laughed nervously to myself. Guess Mom's code didn't come with instructions. But I wasn't giving up. Not yet. That night, I slept in her bed for the first time since the funeral. The sheets smelled like detergent and dust. Outside, rain tapped the windows in slow rhythm. I turned the pendant in my hand until sleep finally came. And in that half-dream, half-memory place, I saw her again, Mom at the kitchen sink, whispering, "Choose the time yourself." When I woke, dawn leaked through the blinds, soft and cold. For the first time, I felt like the real story of her life, of our family, hadn't even started yet. Morning came thin and gray, the kind of Portland light that makes everything look like it's been washed in milk. I brewed coffee in Mom's chipped blue kettle and stood over the oak chest again, breathing in the cedar and dust. The seam in the base stared back, insolent. I pressed at the corners until my fingertips throbbed. Nothing. The words Sabine left me tasted strange in my mouth. Amber Lark. I said them once. Twice. The chest kept its silence the way my mother had kept hers. By 9, I was back in the courthouse, my heels biting new blisters into my skin. Downstairs, the public defender bullpen buzzed with fluorescent fatigue. Liam Porter leaned on the edge of my cubicle, eyes on the clock rather than on me. "You're 5 minutes late to arraignments." "I'll make it up this afternoon." He studied the stack of probate filings on my chair, the yellow flags like a field of warnings. "Your clients won't get those minutes back, Harper." I know. I hated how defensive it sounded. "I'm not dropping any balls." He lowered his voice. "I'm not your enemy. But don't lose yourself to a fight you can't win. You can't save your mother by failing other people's kids." I swallowed the answer that wanted to bite, closed my laptop, and sprinted for the elevator. I told myself I could hold both worlds. I told myself I was built for this kind of balance. That was the first lie of the day. At lunch, I climbed the back stairs to records. The hallway smelled like toner and lemon cleaner. Tessa Nguyen sat behind a fortress of folders, hair pinned neat, eyes sharper than the paper cuts on her fingers. She didn't look up when I stopped. "Can I help you, Miss Lane?" "Off the record," I said, and watched the tiniest smile tug her mouth. "What is it with you lawyers and that phrase? You think it's a magic cloak." She slid a sign-in sheet toward me anyway. "Date, time." I signed. "I'm looking for hearing notices and motions filed in my mother's estate." The docket looked different on the screen this morning. Tessa's eyebrow lifted a millimeter. She walked to a cabinet and returned with a thin stack. "That's because one of them wasn't there yesterday." "Which one?" She tapped a page. "Emergency motion to seal for potential national security. Filed at 7:51 a.m. Stamped by Chambers." Not the clerk's window. She met my eyes then, perfectly steady. "Strange, isn't it? Is that allowed?" "There's a lot that's allowed when the person asking knows which door to use." She lowered her voice. "Do you want to know something stranger?" I nodded. "The judge's chamber's door log shows an entry after hours last week. No counsel of record. No clerk. Just 2 keycard pings." "Who?" "I can't say," she said. But her pause was deliberate, shaped like a name. "But I can say this. Don't assume the only battle is in the courtroom." Outside, rain came down in that fine mist that coats everything without making a sound. I stood under the awning and read the motion again. Daniel's signature, smoothed into perfect loops. The words potential and national and security strung together to make a wall I could not see through. A gust of wind pushed damp air under my coat, and for a second I felt the cold reach for my bones the way a hand might. "Choose the time yourself." My mother's voice again, uninvited but welcome. Maya met me at a corner table in the cafeteria with a plastic fork and a legal pad. "If they want to seal it, we don't fight the seal first," she said. "We fight the reason anyone wants a seal at all. Ethics before substance. Conflict before content. We need proof. You don't go hunting bear with bare hands." She handed me a list. "We build the pattern. Door locks. Payment records. Scheduling anomalies. Who sits where? Who touches what? Who signs when? Process is cleaner than secrets." I exhaled. Tessa just confirmed a late-night entry. Maya's face didn't change, but she underlined a word so hard her pen tore the paper. "Good. Now get 3 more points and you have a shape." On my drive to Mom's townhouse that night, a gray SUV idled half a block down. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it wasn't. I pulled into the driveway and sat with the engine ticking, feeling the kind of anger that doesn't roar but settles in, low and steady, like a pilot light. Inside, the house greeted me with silence and the faint smell of spice from a jar of cinnamon Mom had left near the stove. I took the pendant off my neck and set it in the bowl where she used to drop her keys. I returned to the chest with a flashlight and a stubbornness I recognized from every photo of her. I ran the beam along the rose carvings, into the grooves, the lips of the petals. Something caught my eye. The wood around one rose had a microscopic gap, like the edge of a secret. I pressed. A soft click. The bottom raised not even a quarter inch, just enough to slip my fingernails beneath and tug. The false floor lifted. I felt the air change, like the room had been holding its breath for years. Inside, quilts and letters gave way to hard edges. A photo envelope, a leather notebook tied with a faded ribbon, a thin stack of documents wrapped in wax paper. My mouth went dry. I lifted the envelope first, because it was the least heavy with promise, and slid out 4 photographs. Mom at a console, headphones around her neck. A younger Gregory, not yet polished by money. And someone else in uniform, turned profile, writing. In the corner of one print, a sliver of handwritten initials, an M. My hands shook. I set the photos aside and untied the ribbon on the leather notebook. Lila's handwriting rose up at me, precise and unhurried. She wrote like a woman who didn't need to prove anything. Dates marched down the margins. Most lines were mundane, almost boring, technical language and acronyms. I resisted the urge to read. I wasn't here for content. Not yet. I was here for proof of existence. Chain of custody. The skeleton, not the skin. I found a memo on cream paper, edges scalloped from age. In the margin, a note in unfamiliar script. Review scope Raj ask in. M. The letters were jagged, the ink slightly smeared. For a moment the kitchen, the courtrooms, the SUV, all of it faded. There was just me, and that tiny scrawl, and the knowledge that my mother had been 10 steps ahead even in her quietest seasons. My phone buzzed. A text from Sabine. Don't read it alone. Bring a witness. Bring two. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I typed back. I found something. The dots pulsed, then stopped. New text. Do not put substance in email. Just confirm existence. I closed the chest, replaced the quilts, and slid the false floor back into place until it kissed the edges flush. I pressed the rose again and heard the catch engage. When I stood, my knees cracked like old wood. I poured a glass of tap water and watched it tremble in my hand. It didn't spill. The next morning, Maya and I met Colton Reeves at a diner with a leaky roof and coffee that tasted like burnt toast. Colton wore a suit that had seen 20 careful years and a tie that didn't match on purpose. He shook our hands as if he were measuring truth by the bones of our fingers. I won't touch classified material, he said, before the waitress could pour. We're not asking you to, Maya answered. Just process. Who had access? Who signed? Who supervised access? The architecture, not the walls. Colton nodded, satisfied. Then you came to the right man. He pulled out a notebook and began listing departments. Roles, clearance levels, audit trails. Like a cartographer tracing a coastline he could still see in his sleep. If your mother wrote anything down, she wrote it correctly, he said. That was her way. Did you know Judge Merrick then? I asked. His jaw tightened. I knew a captain who later became a judge. I knew which rooms he entered and which signatures followed. I can swear to process. I won't swear to content. If that's not enough, find someone more careless. It's enough, I said, and felt relief, like a small, warm light under my ribs. After Colton left, I walked the 4 blocks to the courthouse alone. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to test whether the building itself would accept me on days without hearings. Maybe I wanted to stand under the dome and tell it I understood its games now. In the lobby, my phone rang again. Unknown caller. For a second I considered letting it die in my pocket. I answered. Miss Lane, Daniel Pike said, voice smooth as poured latte. My client would like to resolve this quickly and compassionately. He would. Full inheritance per the will, he said. We simply request the family chest and any incidental items of uncertain origin. Incidental, I repeated, feeling the word between my teeth. He never wanted that chest while she lived. Grief can be clarifying, he said, which sounded like a line he practiced in mirrors. We can also discuss a separate financial accommodation. 200,000. A fresh start. In the echoing lobby, I could hear the turnstiles clicking, security wands chirping, shoes against tile. For a moment, the noise felt like a current trying to carry me away. Send it over, I said. I'll review. Of course. He paused. I advise you to consider the weight of certain decisions. Silence can be a form of mercy. Or a form of rot, I said, and ended the call. I sat on a bench beneath a bronze plaque with names I didn't recognize and opened the email as soon as it arrived. The NDA was clean as a scalpel, sterilized by years of use. Paragraph 14 did exactly what Maya had warned me about. No administrative complaints. No ethics reports. No acknowledgement of a regular process. A legal lobotomy. I forwarded it to Maya with one line. They want the tongue and the memory. On my way out, I saw Tessa again, arms full of files. She nodded once. You're going to need copies of the judge's payment disclosures. She scribbled a note and tore it free. Public Records Office. Ask for Claire. She owes me a favor. Her voice softened. And stop coming here alone at night. Hallways keep secrets, but they also keep echoes. That evening, I drove to the townhouse with Maya behind me, her headlights steady in the rain like a promise. We opened the chest together. I showed her the seam, the catch, the leather notebook. We photographed everything but did not read. We logged the time. We logged who was present. We logged the order in which items were handled. We placed them in a fireproof box, then into a second case, then into a rental safe I had reserved under a different last name. Preparation is not paranoia when you have enemies. It is an apology in advance to the future for the risks you take in the present. When we were done, we sat on the floor, our backs against the couch, the house humming like a creature too old to sleep. Maya balanced the pendant chain on her finger and watched it spin. "Amber Lark," she said, testing the weight. "What does it open?" "I don't know yet," I said, but I was thinking of the gap I hadn't pressed. The part of the base I hadn't dared to pry further. The sense that the chest had one more secret tucked under its breath. I didn't know it then, but the second bottom was waiting, patient as winter, for the smallest tilt of light to reveal its edge. The following week blurred into one long pulse of adrenaline and exhaustion. Every morning began with coffee and case files. Every night ended with me staring at the locked safe under my bed. My world had compressed into two spaces, the courthouse and the townhouse truth on one end, ghosts on the other. On Monday, I was late again. Liam stood at my desk before I even dropped my bag. "3 arraignments missed in 2 weeks," he said flatly. "Rachel's been covering. You're burning Goodwill fast." "I'll make it right," he sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Harper, I know you think this probate case matters, but the system doesn't care about your personal wars. Clients here need you. Real ones." I looked up from the docket, my throat dry. My mother was real. The words slipped out before I could stop them. He froze, then softened just slightly. "I'm sorry for your loss. But don't let him take your career." Too late, I thought. He already took most of my peace. That evening, I parked outside Maya's apartment building. The gray SUV was there again, same dent on the bumper, same tinted windows. Its headlights flicked on as I passed. Maya stepped out onto her balcony when she saw me looking. "Ignore them," she said through the drizzle. "They want you rattled." "I'm already rattled." She threw me a towel for my wet hair and nodded toward her desk. They filed something new. I skimmed the motion she'd printed. Petition for protective order, national security grounds. My father was now alleging that Mom's belongings might contain classified materials from her prior employment. "They're escalating," I said quietly. "Exactly," Maya replied. "Which means they're scared. They can't risk the real contents of that journal being reviewed by any neutral court." I leaned back, staring at the ceiling fan spinning in slow, uneven circles. How do we fight an accusation like that without violating security protocols ourselves? She smiled faintly. "We don't need to fight the claim, Harper. We expose the motive behind it." By Thursday, whispers had started around the courthouse. Someone had leaked that Judge Merrick's conduct was under quiet review. I could feel the tension in every hallway, law clerks avoiding eye contact, security guards standing too close to my bag during checks. Tessa found me in the copy room late one afternoon. "Word is Alcott's old law partner, your father's friend, called in a favor to the presiding judge." I turned sharply. "To do what?" "Reassign your case." "But it didn't go through. Someone on the oversight committee blocked it." "Who?" Tessa gave a small smile. "Anonymous." Before I could thank her, she added, "Don't trust Ortiz completely. There's talk she was investigated years ago for altering field logs. She might be cleaning her own name." Her warning stuck in my head long after she walked away. Friday morning, I met Sabine in a park off Burnside. Rain pooled on the wooden benches. The air smelled like wet bark and iron. She didn't waste time. I heard from an old contact at Defense Archives. The Project Glass wasn't shut down when we left. It was rebranded, folded into private contracting. "Merrick and your father both profited quietly." I blinked. "Profited? From surveillance?" She shrugged. "Influence is a currency, Harper. You don't need to sell data when you can sell access." I studied her face. "You altered a log once, didn't you?" Her jaw tightened. "To protect your mother." She refused to go along with something darker. I rerouted her signature. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you're standing where she stood before she disappeared from the records. And I don't want another file marked lost asset." She reached into her coat pocket and handed me a sealed envelope. "Coordinates of a storage locker your mother rented in 2004. She stopped paying in 2012, but no one claimed it. If the chest wasn't the full story, this might be." When I looked up again, she was already walking away, umbrella snapping open like a blackwing. That night, I couldn't sleep. The pendant twisted in my fingers as rain hit the roof. At 2 a.m., I drove to Beaverton, parked near the old storage facility, and stared through the chain-link fence. The air was thick with moss and gasoline. The night guard eyed me suspiciously, but didn't stop me when I asked about Unit 47. Been locked for years, he said. Owner paid ahead for a decade. Stopped showing up after 2012. You family? I nodded. He hesitated, then said, the locks changed twice. Not by us. That sent a cold pulse down my spine. Someone had been inside. The next day, Maya and I filed a motion to compel transparency in Judge Merrick's rulings, attaching copies of his financial disclosures. It was procedural, clean, entirely above board, but it sent the message, we know. Within 24 hours, Daniel Pike called again. My client is deeply concerned, he said. He believes continuing down this road could have unintended consequences for all involved. Unintended, I repeated. Like criminal exposure? Silence. Then, you've grown bold, Miss Lane. Careful. Boldness burns fast in our profession. I smiled without warmth. Then maybe it's time someone lit a match. That weekend, I drove to the townhouse again. The air inside smelled heavier, like someone had moved things. I checked the chest. The carvings were dusted, the latch slightly off-center. My pulse jumped. I ran to the kitchen, flipped the light, and saw muddy footprints near the back door. I called Maya. Someone's been here. Police? They'll just file a report. I'll change the locks first. Harper, this is a warning. Don't brush it off. I won't. But I did, at least in the way she meant. I didn't run. I didn't hide. I stayed awake until dawn, sitting beside that chest with a baseball bat and Mom's pendant glinting in the lamplight. And somewhere between the ticking clock and my own heartbeat, a thought surfaced like an air bubble through dark water. They're not just protecting themselves. They're protecting something bigger. By Monday morning, my inbox was a battlefield. 3 new filings from my father's firm. 1 notice of hearing advancement moved up without explanation. And an internal memo from Liam reminding me I was officially on performance review. I shut my office door and pressed my forehead against the cold window. Portland rain streaked the glass. The skyline blurred into watercolor gray. My father's strategy wasn't legal anymore. It was psychological. He wanted me stretched thin, doubting myself, cornered. Maya arrived with 2 coffees. No small talk. You're on their radar in a way that isn't procedural, she said. Daniel just called the clerk's office asking for your caseload schedule. That's not normal. Why? Because if you look unreliable, they can discredit anything you file. I let out a low laugh. So now I'm both the grieving daughter and the unstable attorney. Perfect narrative. Let them think that, Maya said calmly. It'll make what comes next hit harder. That afternoon, I received an anonymous text. Drop the case or you'll lose more than a license. No signature. Just those words, black letters on a white screen, glowing like a warning flare. I showed Maya. Classic intimidation, she said, though her voice was tighter than usual. They're escalating because you're close. Close to what, though? The truth, or the breaking point? That night, I went through my mother's journal again, this time page by page, detail by detail. Most entries were clinical frequencies, call signs, timestamps, but one line near the end caught my eye. Amber Lark. Mirror key. Second layer. Only if necessary. Mirror key. My breath caught. I ran to the chest, grabbed a hand mirror from Mom's vanity, and angled it against the rose carvings. The engraving shimmered in reverse, a faint pattern of dots beneath the petals. Morse code. I counted the marks. Translated. L-A-T-C-H. A second latch. I slid my fingers along the base until I felt a ridge hidden under the wood trim. Click. The bottom lifted again, revealing a compartment smaller than a book. Inside was a sealed envelope stamped top secret in fading red ink, and beneath it, another leather-bound notebook. My mother's handwriting on the first page. If you're reading this, they're still watching. By morning, I was in Maya's office, the envelope still sealed between us. Don't open it, she said immediately. We don't need content, just the fact that it exists. It could prove everything. Or destroy you, she countered. If it's classified, possession alone is a felony. Your father would love that headline. She wasn't wrong, but I couldn't shake the image of Mom sitting at her desk years ago, pen steady, knowing she was building a time bomb for someone else to find. What if I just read enough to understand what they're afraid of? I whispered, Harper. But I was already sliding the paper out halfway. A photo fell free. My mother in uniform again, standing beside a man I didn't recognize this time, neither my father nor Merrick. A caption scrawled on the back read, Gardner Leverage Meeting, 1998. Below it, compromised chain confirmed. Merrick approved. Maya exhaled. That's your proof. Not the file, the inscription. We can use that. I slid the photo into a protective sleeve, hands trembling. This is what she died trying to hide. No, Maya said quietly. This is what she lived trying to protect you from. Later that day, I met Tessa in the courthouse basement. She'd brought a USB drive and a look of quiet defiance. These are entry logs for the past year, she said. Judge Merrick's chamber door. You'll notice multiple late-night visits by someone with a visitor badge assigned to Ames and Pike. I scrolled through the data. Dates? 3 of them match your father's emergency motions. That was the nail. We had proof of ex parte meetings, undisclosed connections, and now physical access that violated court procedure. Why are you helping me, Tessa? I asked. She hesitated, then said, because I watched your mother get crushed in this building once. I didn't speak up then. I won't repeat that mistake. The next morning, I woke to my apartment door ajar. Nothing missing, just papers rearranged, drawers slightly open. They'd been here. They wanted me to know. I called Maya immediately. Pack everything. Move the evidence to Colton's cabin, she said. He's got off-grid storage. No digital footprint. We spent the next 12 hours driving into the Cascades, the rain turning to sleet as we climbed. The cabin sat above a frozen lake, a dot of light in the dark forest. Colton greeted us at the door with a cautious nod. I'll keep it safe, he said simply. But understand, when you expose men like Merrick and Ames, you're not just poking lawyers. You're poking the system that lets them exist. I know, I said, and I'm done letting it win. Back in Portland, a new motion hit the docket. Motion to strike all evidence on grounds of privileged material. Daniel Pike's fingerprints were all over it, clean, clinical, poisonous. They were trying to erase everything before we could use it. Maya stared at the screen. They're daring us to go public. So we will, I said. That night, we drafted a parallel complaint to the Judicial Ethics Committee, citing conflict of interest, undeclared financial ties, and irregular procedural conduct. No classified content, just the pattern. We uploaded it at 11:59 p.m. When the confirmation email hit my inbox, I finally let myself breathe. The next morning, Daniel called again, voice harder this time. You've crossed a line, Harper. You can't fight both your father and the court. I leaned back in my chair, calm. Then maybe it's time someone does. Silence. Then a quiet threat. You don't know what you're unleashing. He hung up, and for the first time, I smiled, because maybe he was right, but this time, the fire was mine to light. The courthouse smelled like cold marble and stale coffee that morning. My heels echoed down the hall like gunshots as I followed Maya toward Courtroom 4B. This was it. After 8 months of delays, intimidation, and threats, we'd finally forced a hearing and open session under Judge Helena Duarte, reassigned after Merrick's sudden medical leave. I could feel my pulse in my palms. My father was already seated when we entered, his navy suit crisp, hair perfectly combed. Gregory Ames looked every inch the respectable patriarch he pretended to be. Beside him sat Daniel Pike, flipping through a stack of papers, pretending not to see us. Maya leaned close. Remember facts, not fury. I nodded, though my heart was already a furnace. Judge Duarte took the bench, silver hair pulled into a no-nonsense knot. Her reputation was clean, incorruptible, the one thing my father hadn't accounted for. Counsel, she began, scanning the docket. We're here regarding multiple motions. The petition to seal evidence, the motion for recusal of Judge Merrick, and the estate distribution of the late Lila Hart. Let's proceed. Daniel rose smoothly. Your Honor, my client, Mr. Ames, wishes to emphasize that this entire matter concerns potentially sensitive government property. We request all discussion occur in camera to protect. Denied. Judge Duarte cut in. This hearing remains public until I'm shown legal cause to close it. Continue. He hesitated just a flicker, but I saw it. Miss Lane, the judge said, turning to me. You may present your argument. I stood. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Your Honor, this case has been delayed 5 times. Each delay coincided with ex parte communication between Judge Merrick and opposing counsel. I have door access logs, payment records, and correspondence that show an undisclosed financial relationship. Daniel's jaw tightened. Your Honor, I'm not finished. My voice cut sharper than I expected. This isn't about national security. It's about corruption and about my father using his influence to rewrite the law when it stopped serving him. The gallery murmured. Someone from the press row leaned forward, scribbling. Judge Duarte raised a hand for silence. Miss Lane, you're alleging misconduct by sitting officers of this court. I trust you have documentation? Maya handed the clerk a binder. Yes, Your Honor. Payment transfers from Ames and Pike to a private consultancy operated by Judge Merrick under an alias Crossbridge Advisory. Cross-referenced with dates of judicial rulings in this case. The judge adjusted her glasses. That's very specific. Because it's true, I said, and because my mother kept the receipts before she died. Daniel exhaled sharply, flipping a page in performative disbelief. Your Honor, this is reckless. Miss Lane is waving around half-truths built on emotional bias. If these materials involve government operations, she's risking national security breaches. Then perhaps you'd like to explain why those materials exist in her mother's possession at all. Maya countered, her tone surgical. Gregory's composure cracked for the first time. He leaned toward Daniel, whispering something urgent. Daniel's knuckles whitened on his pen. Judge Duarte's eyes shifted toward me again. Miss Lane, you mentioned ex parte communication. Do you have corroboration? I motioned toward the back of the courtroom. Tessa Nguyen, clerk of court, and retired Major Colton Reeves are both present to testify. Gasps rippled through the room. Tessa rose first, nervous but steady. She confirmed the after-hours meetings, the visitor badge linked to my father's firm, the missing docket entries. Then Colton took the stand, rigid posture, voice like gravel. He confirmed the military project, Operation Tideglass, and the connection between my father and Merrick during their years as legal consultants. He didn't reveal classified content he didn't need to. Judge Duarte's expression hardened. Mr. Pike, do you dispute these relationships? Daniel glanced at Gregory, then back at the judge. We do not deny professional overlap, but there's no evidence of impropriety. I took one slow step forward. Then maybe this will help. I placed a single photograph on the table, one of the images from the false bottom of the chest. It showed my father and Merrick in military uniforms, their arms slung around each other beside surveillance equipment. Scrawled on the back, in my mother's handwriting, Tideglass Review Committee, 1998. The courtroom went silent. Gregory's face blanched. He tried to recover, straightening his tie, but his voice trembled. This is an invasion of privacy. These materials are illegally obtained. They were my mother's, I said evenly, and she was your wife. He stood abruptly. You have no idea what you're playing with, Harper. You're jeopardizing national security? I cut in. Funny how that's the line every guilty man hides behind. Judge Duarte's gavel struck once. Mr. Ames, sit down or I'll hold you in contempt. He sank back into his chair, fists clenched, sweat glistening at his temple. Maya stepped forward, voice calm and clear. Your Honor, this court must confront a simple fact. A sitting judge presided over a case involving a former financial client. While that client used national security claims to suppress opposing evidence, the appearance of impropriety alone warrants recusal and referral to the Judicial Ethics Committee. Judge Duarte studied us both for a long moment. Agreed. Daniel tried one last move. Then, Your Honor, in light of these claims, we request immediate sealing of all records to prevent potential exposure of sensitive material. Before the judge could respond, I spoke again. No need, Your Honor. None of this contains classified data. It only contains names. And one name, in particular, tells the whole story. I turned to my father, Amber Lark. The color drained from his face. His lips parted, but no words came out. Across the aisle, Daniel stiffened as though struck. Judge Duarte frowned. What does that mean? Ask Judge Merrick, I said softly. He'll understand. The air shifted. Even without context, everyone in that room felt it. Whatever those words signified, they landed like a detonator only a few of us could hear ticking. Gregory slumped back in his chair, whispering, You don't know what you've done. I smiled for the first time that day, small, cold, certain. Oh, I think I do. Judge Duarte cleared her throat. Given these revelations, the motion to seal is denied. Judge Merrick's recusal is accepted effective immediately. The estate will be reviewed under my supervision. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the Judicial Ethics Committee for full investigation. Her gavel struck once, then again. Court adjourned. The sound echoed through me like thunder breaking after a long storm. As the room emptied, my father lingered. He approached slowly, eyes hollow. "You've destroyed everything," he whispered. "Your career, our family name." "Our family name?" I said, meeting his gaze. "You did that years ago. I'm just writing the footnote." He flinched. For the first time, Gregory Ames, the man who'd always owned every room he entered, looked small. I turned to leave. The pendant at my neck caught the light like a quiet pulse. Outside, reporters crowded the courthouse steps, shouting questions. I walked past them into the rain. Each drop felt cleaner than the last. Maya caught up, breathless, exhilarated. "You realize what just happened in there?" "Yes," I said. "But it's not over. He's still hiding something." "What?" I looked up at the gray Oregon sky. Whatever Amber Lark really means. By the time the courthouse emptied, dusk had swallowed downtown Portland. The rain had turned thin and silvery, the kind that hangs in the air instead of falling. I stood on the courthouse steps, watching my father's car disappear into traffic, the red taillights smearing through the mist like blood and water. We'd won the hearing, technically. Judge Merrick was recused, the estate restored. My mother's name cleared. But victory didn't feel clean. It felt unfinished, like a door left ajar in a storm. Maya joined me under the awning, umbrella tilted between us. "You should be celebrating," she said softly. "This is what we fought for." "I know." I stared across the street, where a black sedan idled too long. "But men like my father don't lose quietly." She followed my gaze. "You think he'll come after you again?" "Not directly," I said. "He doesn't fight with fists. He fights with silence, and with friends in high places." She slipped her arm through mine. "Then we make noise. The right kind." We walked through puddles back to my car. Every sound engine hum, passing siren, the distant rumble of the Max line felt sharper, like the city itself was listening. At home, the townhouse was cold. I turned on one lamp, its amber light spreading across the walls Mom had painted herself. The oak chest sat in its corner, deceptively ordinary, like it hadn't detonated half a decade of lies. I sat beside it and pulled out her notebook again. There, tucked in the back pocket, I found a single folded note I'd somehow missed. It read, "If they ever speak the name, don't look for protection. Look for the pattern. Love you, kiddo." Mom. A knock startled me. I opened the door to find a courier holding a small padded envelope, no return address. "Delivery for Harper Lane," he said. Inside was a USB drive, plain black, labeled in neat block letters, TL, Echo. I turned it over in my hand, pulse quickening. Another breadcrumb. Another secret. Another door she'd left waiting for me to open. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere over the Willamette River. I placed the USB beside Mom's pendant and whispered to the empty house. "They thought it ended today, Mom. But it's only beginning." The light flickered once, as if she was answering. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, like truth cost you more than love ever gave, subscribe. Because stories like mine don't end with a verdict or a will. They end when the silence finally breaks. Some battles aren't about money or property, they're about taking back your voice from people who built their power on keeping you quiet. And trust me, what's coming next? They won't be able to silence that. This story isn't over, not even close.